Good evening. My name is Tim Nutting. I am currently the assistant to our interim director of bands, Mr. Andrew Faze. I do the marching band and concert band here at UNO. And I also have the privilege of being Dr. Saker's last graduate assistant here. So it's quite the honor. I'm here on behalf of the planning committee, on which I've served with many people in this room who you saw earlier. We're here to make a presentation to Dr. Saker. First of all, I have two things to do. That's the first one. And, I would be remiss if I didn't say that there was a picture earlier that showed Kenya girls with hair. I'm looking at my Dr. Saker look. Yeah, but he doesn't write me recommendation letters still, so I'm not going to talk about it here. The first thing, like I said, I've got a presentation to make on behalf of the committee. As most of you know, Dr. Saker's from Ohio. There's another gentleman who's very well known in band circles, although you may not know him by name, who's also from Ohio. His name is Tom Batiak, and you probably know him through the cartoons he draws. It's the Funky Winkerbean cartoons that most people are familiar with. And most of you may know that Dr. Saker is acquainted with him and is very fond of his cartoons. We contacted Tom earlier in the year and asked him if he would be willing to do a special gift for Dr. Saker to commemorate this occasion. He graciously agreed, and so I first of all would like to present Dr. Saker with his hand-drawn original Tom Batiak print. It says, I wanted to, there you go. And I actually spoke to Tom at the Midwest Clinic when he was talking about this with us, and he said to send his best wishes to Dr. Saker as well. He wished he could have been here this evening, but could not. The second thing I have to do, and I'm so glad I have to do this before rather than after, is I get to introduce him, as would be much harder if I had to do it after he was done talking, believe me. And when thinking about what I was going to say, and I'm going to keep this brief because I know you're not here to hear me talk, you're here to hear him. It took me a while to think about what I was going to say this evening, and actually I finished it sitting at my table after listening to some of the things that other people have said here this evening. And I'm not going to try and follow Chancellor Weber either. That's just a losing battle. But Dr. Saker came into my life at a moment when I was desperately in need of a mentor and friend. And having only known me for a short time, he did so without question, without hesitation, and gladly. And that's something I know that many people in this room share that same experience. And it's sadly something that I fear I'll never be able to repay him for. And I know many people feel that way, and if I know him, he wouldn't want us to anyway. But there is one thing that I can do here this evening, and that's something that I know most, if not all in this room and beyond, would like to do, and that is to say, sir, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my honor and privilege to introduce Dr. James R. Saker.
I've been working on what to say for about 6 months here, and I have no clue what I need to say tonight. First of all, if you had any doubt why I accepted a job here after hearing Del Weber speak tonight, you understand where I came from. And second of all, I did know Tom Batiak pretty well, and I invited him to come to speak to NMEA when I was in the president's rotation. He spoke at the banquet. And I not only know Tom, but I know who the real Harry Dinkle is. The real Harry Dinkle he patterned the script after is a guy named Harry Finkston. And I think Frank probably knows Harry Finkston too. But the other part of the equation, and I have a couple of original scripts that he sent to me, and this will go to Frank near and dear to his heart as well. Holly the Majorette in the series is actually in real life Holly Mayer, Cheryl Mayer Saker's cousin. And she was a world-class twirler. She's a Miss America contestant from Massachusetts. She won the talent contest there. And she had a majorette mother for a father. And as luck would have it, and I'll tell you about the strip, as luck would have it, shortly after Holly in fact, Holly Mayer twirled at the age of 11 with my first high school band and blew everybody away. As luck would have it, she graduated, and to West Geauga came one young Frank Trace. And he inherited Cheryl's uncle, Bill Mayer, the majorette mother, and Holly's sister, April. And so every time I greet Bill, and I think I would be kind if I said Bill Mayer, when it came to his twirling daughter, was a royal pain in the ass. Is that close enough? And so every time I see Frank, I greet him. I said, by the way, Bill Mayer sends his best wishes to you. But the script that Tom sent to me is a great one. And I apologize, I have a trombone playing son, but the script shows Holly the Majorette in her uniform. If you're a fan of this whole series, it's really very, very clever. In her uniform and everything, and her baton ready, and she's in Dinkle's office, and she says, Mr. Dinkle, you've got to do something. The trombones are revolting. And the next caption you see is a barbed wire fence with a guard tower around the band camp, and these trombone players with their trombones climbing over this barbed wire fence. And then the final caption shows Dinkle looking right at you and said, you know, on that instrument, you take what you can get. You know what? I'm going to have to get glasses here.
Imagine that.
Dr. Weber, do you still have my glasses?
Number 2 wife did that.
So first of all, I'd like to thank you for being here, because if you read the Omaha World Herald, you may have thought that some of you have seen the World Herald. This lovely article about my retirement and the reunion this weekend was at the top of the obituary page. I'm pleased to report it wasn't at the bottom of the page. So thank you all for being here. The journey of 36 years seems in many ways like it started yesterday. And as I watched some of the slides I could see going by and see the faces, it's amazing to me how many of them I remember and remember well. And the other thing that's amazing to me is last night when we had the picnic in the park, thank you campus, a lot of the alums were there, and I remembered every single one. And then at the rehearsal last night, I remembered every single one. I had one I had to think about a little bit. And then coming here this evening, with prodding from one person, I remembered everyone that came in here. I couldn't remember my glasses, nor my keys. And I don't know why I can do that. I can't do what Dr. Weber did. And some of you know when I called you by the wrong name for a while until I got it right. But what was described at that dinner was exactly right, Derek. He said goodbye to everybody by name, and I didn't prompt him. He didn't say, well, now who is this one? You know, I don't know how he did that, but I suspect he probably knows where his keys are, too. By By the way, before Derek's comments,
Wait a minute.
what?
They had to go back to get a speech tonight.
Well, and before Derek did the introduction, we were talking about that dinner at their home, and Luann said, they ate everything in the house. I had to go and get a ham out of the freezer or something to feed them. So we know something about that as well. I'd like to do some acknowledgments first of all. We have a really fantastic Kappa Kappa Psi chapter here. In most universities, the Kappa chapter serves the university bands, but here it serves the entire music department. And they were very helpful in planning all of this and in support of this. They did a great job with the barbecue last night for the alums, but they do great work all the time. And the Kappa chapter sponsor has typically been the assistant band director. And this started, we started the chapter back in the 1990s. And so all of these young people at this table here who took over the reins there helped to hone that. But the past couple of years have been just fantastic. And Jonathan wasn't planning to be here tonight, but I asked him to come as my guest because he's the current president. So Jonathan, on behalf of the Kappa chapter, would you stand and let us say thank you to you? And while I'm at it, at this table are some of the current members of the band staff who helped prepare the music, helped prepare the displays that were done, and just have done a ton of work for this event on top of all of the work they have to do all the time. So band staff members, would you stand please too? And there's the theme that I hope will permeate my discussions tonight. And I'd like to just digress from my notes for a second and talk about that because I think this symbolizes it. So on one of the slides I saw, you saw me, you didn't know what it was, at a meeting with Doug Kaiser and Carol Schmidt and a bunch of other undergrad. Dave Clark was there too. And that was at the Nebraska Bandmasters banquet. When I was president. And honestly, when I came here, I was the marching band director, jazz band director, concert band director, music educator, student teacher, supervisor. I did floors at night in the And at the time, and I'll talk about how this happened, but at the time, I was the president-elect president, and so on. We didn't have grad students. I didn't have a secretary except for Carol Schmidt and many others. And they helped me do all of this. And it wasn't my term as the president, it was their term as the president. And even planning this when they came to me over a year ago and said, we'd like to do a retirement celebration. And I said, I'd rather do a celebration of our times together, a reunion, bringing as many people together who can come. And I think you'll see, and Chancellor Weber kind of hit a little bit on this as well, that this has been a journey that's been shared by thousands of people, not just the students, but my professional colleagues. I'm going to recognize some of the band directors in the state who worked with me and helped, some of my professional colleagues from other institutions, and the faculty and staff and administration and custodial people, and yes, even sometimes the parking people, who along the way have helped me in this quest. And the amazing thing about it, and I was discussing with my two students from Champion, Ohio, who are here today, discussing this, said, I don't know when it happened, but at some point it hit me that this whole thing wasn't about me. And I mean, that maybe that seems simplistic to you, but at the time I grew up, I was going to replace Bud Herseth in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra. I mean, that's what I grew up doing. And so from the time I was in 7th grade, I heard the great Bud Herseth play, and I said, I am going to be doing that someday. Bud Herseth retired 8 years ago. So obviously I had to go, but it did hit me that what really made me tick as a person was seeing other people do well. And you can't, I said to the alumni band, when you go like this, trust me, when I became department chairman, I know this very well. You go like this, you depend upon the people out there to do something, make music. Faculty meetings, and Tom and Melissa learned this too, when you go like this, usually 1,000 different things happen and none of it's what you wanted to happen. So that lesson was learned very early on, and it's so rewarding to me that the fact that almost every day I hear from students from 1967, 68, 69, 70, and as well as from so many of you, especially if you're looking for a job, I hear from you. I'd also like to recognize, Melissa mentioned that Dean Baker her husband had a health emergency this week, and he got out of the hospital today. He's going to be fine, everything's okay, but she had to go back because he just got home. But she came, we had a reception for some of the former assistant band directors and the committee that helped plan this and some personal friends before this, and Dean Baker did come and speak with everybody. She was eloquent, and she was very kind in her comments, and I know she sincerely regrets not being here. But we have had such a great run here, and during my time with such a great administrative team, and I'm going to talk with them, talk about some of them in particular in a little bit here. But you cannot do anything without the support of the people around you, and without the leadership of the people around you. And I was so blessed to have such great support and leadership for so long. And you all know the road is not always as easy as you would like it to be. And then there have been, and I know Chancellor Weber and I and some others have been in some sessions where it wasn't all that pleasant at times. But yet that support was consistently there. And I'd like to acknowledge my faculty colleagues that are here, and those that I've worked with over the years. Also, I worked pretty closely with several of the deans in the college who really were terrific to work with as well. Tom and Melissa, who picked up the chair's position after I stepped down from that. And the many people at this institution, I'd like to say thank you, and I'd like you to ask you to join me in thanking them as well. And in particular, the three people from the faculty that have really carried the water in terms of making so many things happen and participating in the planning and all the arrangements and so on. First of all, Pete, stand please. Andy Face is the interim director of bands this year, and before you apply, I have to tell you, we've had conference call every Thursday morning. He has discussed things with me, asked for my advice. In almost every instance, he said, I thought that's what you want to do, but I just want to confirm it's the right thing to do. We've talked about a myriad of things, and he's had the wind ensemble well prepared when I was here in January, and well prepared for the concert you're going to hear tomorrow. So Andy, congratulations, and thank you for a good job. Of all, you heard from my son Tim, one of many sons I've had over the years. Tim has been really hard at work at so much of this. In fact, he did the program you're going to see tomorrow. He did a lot of the grunt work for me, and he has been an invaluable resource and a very close friend as well. Thank you, Tim. We have three staff members in the music department, and one of them was the secretary in the department prior to my being the chair, and then she decided to have another child, left for a while, and then when I became the chair, I called her and said, Barb, is it time to come back to work? And she said, I'd love to come back. So she's been back ever since I began as the chair. Barb McCormick and Jen Walcott is over here. Barb, stand please. Jen Walcott's our building manager. One of the last things I did was, as the department chair, is I wrote a proposal to fund a scholarship and recruitment coordinator for the department, and we got the funding for that new position, and Shelley Harden has been in that position ever since. Shelley. And I should have done this before. There are lots of members of the faculty here tonight, and I really appreciate your being here. Would you please stand? You're going to hear some of them perform tomorrow, but all the music faculty that are here, please stand. And I had a part in hiring all of them. They were hired during my time as the department chair. In fact, I'll mention this later, but one of the biggest changes that happened when I took over as chair is we decided we needed to change what we're doing. We did a complete overhaul of the music department, and we went from having 2 piano teachers and 3 students, and 2 string teachers and 4 students, and 3 voice students and 3 students, to having people who actually played an instrument or a percussion instrument or a string instrument and actually recruited students. And it's made a huge difference in what we've done. So thank you to all of you who helped with that process. And then I'd like all the members of the planning committee to stand. They have been meeting for over a year to make this weekend possible, and I'd like to say thank you to you personally. Please stand so we can all say thank you. And so you've heard beautiful performance by Educator and Karrin, and thank you so much for doing that. It's a great honor for me to have you here and doing that. Steve Rabine is going to entertain you tomorrow at the reception after the concert. Cindy, Pete, Barry, Larry, McTaggart, Giannis, Andy, Tim are all going to be involved in the concert tomorrow. You must come. If you're not planning to come, change your plans. It's going to be fantastic. And I have to tell you, when we were planning this, and Andy and I had many conversations about this, as I did with several other members of the committee. We didn't know what to expect with the alumni band. And so last night, we started rehearsal with America the Beautiful, and it was beautiful. I was stunned. Actually,
yeah, we were too.
So, in any event, what's that? Oh, okay. In any event, thank you all that have performed and are going to be performing tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that as well. And then I have a couple special introductions to make. First of all, I think generally in this area are some of my band director colleagues, and in some cases, alums before my time, in other cases, some alums since that time. But those of you who are music educators in Nebraska, would you please stand so we could say thank you? And then there are several special guests. Frank Trace, is a band director I referenced earlier from Kansas State University. Frank has been a great friend for a long time. When I grow up, I want to be as strong and effective as he is. Because he's an amazing man and a wonderful friend. Frank. And my other good buddy is unable to be here because he had a death in the family. His stepfather passed away. So Jay Gilbert and his wife aren't here tonight, but he called yesterday to give regards and said, please say hello to all of you. And I know Frank is actually taking a concert for him. Is it tomorrow, Frank? At Dome because of that. So, and then finally, they were referenced earlier, but 2 of my former students from my teaching days at Champion, Ohio, by the way, not the Champion Bands, but the Champion Ohio Band. I don't know whoever designed that. Every place we go, they say, what did you win? But into my life in 1970, Mary Ann Drawl and Frances Rodson came. And Mary Ann was and is one of the finest saxophone players I've ever known. And she's also president of the band. And we have followed each other's careers for years and years and years. And Frances was a baritone saxophone player in the band. As I'm reminded the other day, I hated marching baritone saxes, but they convinced me that I had to march baritone saxes, and so the Champion Band always marched with baritone saxes in the tuba section. So all the way from the Houston, Texas area, Mary Ann and Frances, please. So, Dr. Weber talked about the job offering. The letter with the additional 50% salary increase, scholarships for every student, and all of that, raz and taz, never got to my home. But what did happen, and this is the truth, I came here and I met wonderful students. Bob and Wynn, and Bob Surface, and Ruta, and so many others. And they seemed eager to want to do something, want to have a band. I think, Ruta, Bob, how many people did they interview? Do you remember that? Someone told me it was 5 and I was the last one, but I don't know that. And in any event, I was here for 3 days for that interview. And I interviewed with the dean, who was packing to leave at the time, the athletic director, the assistant, Don Leahy, Connie Clausen, vice chancellor for academic affairs, student affairs, the student center director, the basketball coach. I met with the senior faculty separately, the junior faculty separately, and the part-time faculty separately, and Kermit Peters individually. I also met with the head custodian. I made that part up. But you kind of get the picture. And what I learned later, and particularly from Chancellor Weber, is that they had, I don't know, 4 or 5 candidates, but every one was so different from every other one. In fact, they had one person, I think, who's especially was drum and bugle player that they interviewed. So at the end of my 3 days here, I left and I called Cheryl and I said, "Don't pack. We're not coming." And I said, I met wonderful people here. Every one of these people I just mentioned to you were wonderful people. And the students, the student committee I met, the rehearsal I went to, and I interviewed, they were wonderful people, and some of them really talented people too. But it was pretty obvious to me that there was the department itself didn't know where to go. And that there was so much to do, I didn't know any one human being could do it. And so when I got home, the dean called me the next day and said, "Jim, we'd like to offer you the job." And I said, "Well, his name was Bergman, Dean Bergman. Thank you very much. Enjoyed meeting with you. I enjoyed everybody I met, but no, I don't know any one person can do everything that needs to be done there." So I hung up the phone, and 5 minutes later, the phone rang, and the person said, "Jim, this is Del Weber." And I said, "Well, hello, Dr. Weber." And he said, "I heard you're thinking about not taking the job here." And I don't think he remembers this as vividly as I do, but I said, "No, you got it wrong." And so the bottom line is, he said, "Look, we're not going to bring anybody else in. I don't know what we need to do here, but I think you do. And so I'd like to pay you to come back when you're done with your classes in May and spend whatever time you need. I'll pay your expenses, and I'd like you to prepare a proposal for what the band program at UNO could be and should be, and what it will take to get there." And so I came back, and I spent about 10 days, and I went and I visited with some of it was Keith Mahoney, and with, help me, Jeff Benson, your band.
John Kiefer.
John Kiefer, and with the John Adams with OPS, and with Tony at West. Tony was the interim band director before I came at Westside. And I went through the inventory, which took me about 7 minutes. Because the only new instruments they'd had in the last 10 years, as I could tell, was a baritone saxophone, an electric piano, and a bass amplifier with an electric bass. And the instruments they owned were terrible. There was very little scholarship money, and there was no budget for the bands, although on paper there was supposed to be $3,000, but that got taken away. There was no scholarship money, there was no recruitment program, there was no presence in the area, and I went to the library to look at it, and the past 10 years the library was all in the middle room in the 109 in boxes and piles. It took us 2 years to just get all of the library. Every Friday after rehearsal we sorted music to file the library, so you couldn't tell what was done there. So in any event, I talked with the faculty, I talked with other people, with the athletic people, what they wanted and so on, and I prepared this proposal. So I called Chancellor Weber and I said, "I have it done, can we meet tomorrow morning?" He said, sure. So I showed up at his office. I walked in and I said, Chancellor, here's the proposal. And he said to me, young man, I'm paying you. You sit down while I read this and then we'll talk. And so I sat down while he read. And he got done reading it and he closed the folder and he said, I have 2 questions for you. First question, it looks to me like this is going to cost a pile of money to do. Would we have to do all of this in 1 year? And I said, actually, Chancellor, no, because, in fact, I don't know, I doubt he remembers this at all. And I don't mean any offense here, but I said, if you want to have a first-rate music group in a short period of time, hire a choir director. Because it doesn't take uniforms, it doesn't take instruments, and everybody sings, and all you got to do is have somebody who's dynamic, and you'll have a choir overnight. But choirs don't march very well on football fields. And so I said, no. In fact, it's going to take a while to start a recruitment program, to have a presence, to get people interested in coming here and so on. And so I said, probably it's going to be 4 or 5 years before we'll have the kind of a program you would like to have right now. He said, okay, I can live with that. Now will you take the job? We'll do everything you asked us to do. Will you take the job? So now the rest of you know why I came to you. And although there were some bumps along the road, basically he honored that commitment. And it took a while for some of those things to happen. So that is why I'm here. And I think most of you never knew the rest of that story. And I'm so glad I did. I'd like to before I proceed with some other general comments about that time and those people, I inherited something I didn't suspect. First of all, I asked the faculty to give me a list of the top leaders in the band area because I wanted to start a leadership program. And so he gave me a list of names, and that was Norm Edwards and Lori and Bob and Wynn and Bob Surface, and I'm going to miss many others, but you all know, and I'm going to have you all stand in just a minute. And so I asked him to come to a meeting, and we met in what had been James Peterson's office, which was now my office, and I started by sharing my goals and ideas, what I wanted to accomplish, and so on. And so at one point, there was, I said, now, do you have any questions? And there was a hand that was raised, and I think he was a clarinet player. And I won't name him by name, but his initials were Nick Barron. And Nick said, you sound like you're really serious about this band stuff. And I said, well, yes, I am. He said, well, I wouldn't have come to a school that was serious about band stuff if I didn't learn that. And then I said, well, I need you to help me now, and these are some of the things we want to do, but I need you to give me some ideas of things. We really need to be concerned about what obstacles will be, what are the difficulties will be there. And Bob Jefferson.
Amen. That's true.
So, I knew I had my hands, I had my work cut out for me. So, the first band rehearsal that we had, preschool rehearsal, which is something that started that year, we had 19 people there. And it is possible for a grown man to cry for 20 minutes between UNO and his home in West Omaha. That year we marched over 70 on the field for the first season. And that didn't include the color guard, quote-unquote color guard. Previously described, and I hope none of them are here, but previously described by the athletic director, Don Leahy, as the halftime honeys. They were all members of a sorority that picked each other for the pom-pom squad. And so one of my first duties was to call them together and inform them that there would no longer be a pom-pom squad, but that we were going to start a color guard, and they were welcome to audition for it. Now at that time, and one of the things that I tried to do from the get-go was to do things that would distinguish UNO from all the other schools, namely UNL. And I knew that we couldn't compete because they played football every weekend and they won. And they went to the Orange Bowl and they went to other things. And I knew that we couldn't do that. We had to do other things as well. At that time, the only color guard I knew of, and Bob, maybe you know if this is right or wrong, the only color guard at the high school was at Westside. And it so happened I found out from somebody, Terry Perone is here. Where are you, Terry? Where? Wave at, stand and wave. I found out that Terry Perone had been in the color guard at Westside. I also learned that she was at guard camp that summer, and she was a bassoon player too. Figure that. And I convinced Terry to come and be my color guard coordinator. And God knows that was the most difficult job on the planet. Because these people had no clue whatsoever. But we had a color guard that first year. But what I also inherited was a bunch of really fine, talented musicians. The basis of the jazz band, 3 saxophone players, Norm, Richie, and Tom, and 3 trombone players, Jeff and Bob and Midas. Yeah. Bob Jesperson, Keith Hansen, and a couple of other pretty good trumpet players. We didn't have a drummer, but that's good news there. When the following year, when we played at NMEA, the drummer that was so bad was in a car accident the week before NMEA. And so there was a guy who played the Omaha Symphony. He was a great jazz drum set player, and he played for us, and man, that made the band twice as good. So, but there was a core, and some woodwind players, and we had 3 or 4 very good clarinet players, a couple of really good flute players, minus Ralph, and a couple of other very fine musicians. There just weren't enough of them around. And these guys went to work and helped me do my job. And at the end of that first year, but by the way, all of you from my first band here, would you please stand? Clear back in the back, too. At the end of that first year, same Bob Jesperson came to me, and he said, "You know, young man, this is the way I remember Bob. You need all the help you can get." And although none of us are very big fans of marching band, we're going to be back for 1 more year at least, or maybe 2 more years. And so I've gathered them all together. We've decided we're going to play in the marching band for you next year again. And that saved my tail, because I had the best and strongest musicians who were also becoming even stronger leaders. And so to all of you who did that, thank you. I had a 3rd year because of you. One of the things I tried to do from the get-go was to develop this student leadership system, and I'll talk a little bit more about it in a minute, but from the very beginning, the student leaders met weekly, and then after the first year, I started taking them away to camp to do a leadership training with each of them. And then really the marching band, as it evolved and ran, basically, I never wanted anybody to come to practice or rehearsals, because if you were standing on the sidelines, you'd think it was nothing but a free-for-all. Because there would be people all over the field rehearsing music, doing drill, marching, so on, and the drum major would blow a whistle, and we'd all fall in and march. But it looked like organized chaos at times. But that was the leadership system that we implemented. And then when I was no longer the marching band director, the Sawyers and the Ericas and the Tims and the Courtneys came on, and they put their own spin on it, but we kept that system going. And so not only did they learn something about music, but they also learned something about working with others and about leading. And sometimes those Monday meetings when I was doing the marching band were not very pleasant, because people were at each other's throats. Well, these people aren't doing this, and it just went on and on. But I hear from so many people, including some of you here tonight, talking about, boy, I learned so much more than just about music by that experience. And I think the marching band was an important part of it. As Dr. Weber said, we didn't wear uniforms because we didn't have enough of them. They had survived both a mascot change and an institution change. I think they were purchased, maybe you know, around 1962. And this was 1978, and you couldn't order uniforms and have them immediately. So we marched that first year with black slacks and T-shirts. And Juan Ramon, where are you? Juan Ramon came to the picnic last night with his 1978 marching band t-shirt on. And I haven't seen Norm Major in a couple of years, but the last time I saw him, he was still wearing that 1995 nylon jacket that we got that fall as well. So it says, I think, N. On all the other letters are gone. But it's still and what a great year the first year was. The marching band trip to North Dakota, man, is that a long ways away. And marching into the state of North Dakota where they had no marching band, and having whiskey bottles and beer bottles thrown at us, and they were all empty. I mean, I don't understand. And then at the end of the performance at halftime, a standing ovation. And do you know what happened in North Dakota after that? The students formed a committee. They wanted to restart the marching band, and that committee came to meet with me. And then I met with vice chancellors and so on, and several years later they started a marching band funded by the students at North Dakota. Apples after halftime. I can't tell you the number of people that say, I can't eat an apple without thinking about marching band. But of course, the extracurricular activities which became so important and so well known. The first year I was here, my mother and father-in-law were visiting, and probably around 1 o'clock in the morning, we were sleeping on the floor downstairs because my mother and father-in-law were in the bedroom upstairs, and I get a nudge in the side, and my wife says, Jim, your students are out on the line. And I said, honey, these are sophisticated college students. They don't do those things. They're singing out on the line. So we went to the door, opened the door, turned the light on, and there they are marching, singing Pink Panther, the halftime music from that halftime show that night. And up and down the street, lights are going on. People are coming out in their bedclothes to watch this halftime performance. And so a tradition evolved, and Chancellor Weber had a nighttime performance on his lawn. Sandy Buddha had one on his. I think Athletic Director Don Leahy had one on his. I'm thankful they didn't get arrested. That year, the jazz band went to Northern Colorado. We had David Bacon, a great jazz artist, as a week residency that year. We did a tour across the state, and we were talking about that. We played at the Holiday Inn in Grand Island. I got a 3 nights rooming for everybody for that performance. And Norm was reminding me earlier that the saxophones weren't particularly excited about playing for this. But hey, we got free lodging, and I think they paid for a meal for us. We went to Gering, and the principal met me at Gering and said, we're so glad to have a group from UNO. We've never had a group before. And I said, well, we're glad to be here, but boy, it's a long ways from Omaha. And he says, it's just as far from Gering to Omaha as this room. And then you remember that tour we did that spring? Both the large band and the symphonic band, everybody, and the wind ensemble. And I sent letters out all over the state, and I got responses from Shickley, Nebraska, and Wymore, Nebraska, and other big-name towns. And we did this tour. And in Shickley, Nebraska, some of the students wanted to go across to the gas station to get a soda before we played. And the sign said, closed for the concert by the UNO concert band. And the whole town was shut down. One of the nights we played at Wymore, and we had played 3 times already that day. By the time we got to Wymore, I was exhausted, and I know they were. And so we played, I said, we're just going to do a short program here. We did 4 or 5 tunes, and I said, that's it. And they stood and plotted and plotted and plotted and plotted. Okay, 1, 2. So we did that, plotted. Finally, we played everything we had. And I said to them, look, folks, we got nothing else. Well, they still stood in the pool. And I got a letter a few days after that tour. It was sent to Dr. Weber. It said, I'm an alum of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. We have never had a group from Nebraska-Lincoln come to our school. And your group came and not only played for us, they brought the house down. And by the way, that night, we stayed at a Holiday Inn in Beatrice, and we took up the whole hotel. And so I got the honeymoon suite. all by myself, with mirrors over the bed. By the way, you know that fall, and I think, Doug, you wrote something about this in the program tomorrow, but that fall there was an editorial in the World Herald. The editorial was about big changes on the hilltop, or exciting changes on the hilltop. It was talking about the new era and the new excitement, and the football team is doing well, and the bottom of the editorial said, and the marching band looks and sounds great too. So, what great recognition we got. By the way, the post-game evening activities continued for a long time, and all the way up to at least Bob's barn. But we learned very early on. Cheryl actually said, "Why don't we go crash the band party?" So Jamie and Rob, who were very little at the time, we got some garbage can lids, some pots and pans, and we went to go and march on the lawn of the band party. And we get there, and all of a sudden, there's a scurry, because they're trying to hide the games that they were playing and other things that were going on. And the one in particular was the hoop toss. Yeah, I'll let your imagination run wild with that. So we sang and we performed for them on the lawn, but we decided that probably was not a good idea. So my first NMEA, my first year here when I went, I was the only UNO faculty member there, and there was really no presence from UNO at the conference. So I decided that I needed to do something to help change that. And with the help of the leadership team that we had in place, there was support for doing some of those things. I'd like to make a couple of comments about Dr. Weber. I thought he was going to fry me the whole time, so, but he did a pretty good job of it. We have him to thank for the first scholarship for the marching band and the first scholarship program to support band activities. We also have him to thank for the Strauss Band Scholarship Endowment, which now throws off probably about $20,000 a year in funds to award to students in the bands all over. And I'd like to tell you how that happened. I was headed over to the Hyper building one day to work out, and as I was coming in the door, Chancellor Weber was coming out with a couple, a man and a lady. They said, "Oh, Jim, I'd like you to meet Bill and Janet Strauss." And so I said, "Oh, well, nice to meet you." Of course, I knew who he was. He was the president of the Internorth at the time. And he says, "Yeah, I'm just taking him on a tour and kind of showing the campus." The building was new at that time, showing them the campus. And so I looked at them and I said, "Oh boy, thank you for doing this today." They looked kind of funny at me and said, "Yeah, we don't know what to do with Chancellor Weber. We can't find things to keep him busy." And so, do you remember this, Del? No? I do. So I said, so having to do guided tours on the campus is something he's really good at. Well, afterwards, he calls me and he said, "Thanks a lot, Saker. I was trying to court Bill and Janet Strauss for some scholarship money for you, and then you go and make fun of me in front of these two people." And he said, "Bill said to me, anybody that's like that, I'm worth investing in." And that's how we got the first scholarship money for the band. And Bill and Janet came with the Chancellor to many concerts and events. And almost every time he came, I get a check in the mail for $500 for the scholarship fund. We did this April Fool's concert one time, and he particularly liked that one. We had Otto Bauer, Rich Hoover, and Melissa's talking about this. And Steve Raymine played the vacuum cleaner or something on that program too. And anyway, it's a piece it was commissioned for the opening of the Albert Hall in London by Malcolm Arnold. It's for 3 vacuum cleaners, floor polisher, and orchestra. And so we had Hoover on the Hoover. We had Bauer on Hoover 2. I think Sawyer was in that too. Sawyer was doing the handheld vacuum, and I think Bauer did the floor polisher. I think Steve was on the vacuum as well. Well, Bill got a hoot out of that, and we got a nice donation from him for that. Dr. Bauer came the same year that I came. He was the Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs. And, I need to tell one more thing. He told you about the thing with Roskins and him. I remembered slightly differently, but about who initiated this whole thing. But in any event, when it all was said and done, I had a luncheon at Dell and Ron Roskins, and I had witnesses. Karen White was there, Tom Gutierrez was there, Don Leahy was there, the Vice Chancellors were there, and boy, did we have a good time. In any event, another thing about Chancellor Weber, I was interested in really recruiting a top-notch assistant band director when we finally got the position to do that, and I had identified a candidate named James Sawyer. Now, Jim thinks that we brought him here because I wanted him to be the assistant band director. Ivory Brock is the guy that gave me, he was a friend from Marshall University. We were really interested in Charcy, but the position was for assistant band director. Well, Chancellor Weber's schedule was completely full the day that they were here for the interview. And so I called him and I said, I'd really like you to meet these people. I really want them to come here because they're talented and wonderful people. So he said, you know what, call him, I'll take him out to breakfast tomorrow morning. And so he met them at the hotel and took them to breakfast, and I think he probably sealed the deal with them just like he did with me. Bauer was charged with funding the budget for the concert band or the band program overall. When he came, then again it was the first year, he came at the end of that first year. I had many meetings with him, and finally at one point I said, look, at some point, the money's going to have to come from somewhere. And he said, yeah, but if I give it to you, then these people are there. And I said, Otto, we got to find it somewhere. So he solved the problem. We also had a new dean come that year, and he knew the new dean would be angry about this, and so he gave the first endowed, or not endowed, but the line item for the concert or the band program to me in the music department for the band program, and he gave an equal sum to the new dean. And so that's how he solved that problem. Otto was a great friend, a great colleague. He narrated Lincoln Portrait. He played the vacuum square floor polisher for us. And he was a wonderful human being, and he and Jeanette were two of our best friends. We lost Otto this past fall after a long battle with Parkinson's, but he was integral in what we did. And there were the other team that came. Rich Hoover came later, and some other administrators. Charlie Hine was put in charge of trying to help me that first year. There was a great team, and we couldn't have had the success without their support. As you will read tomorrow, and I mentioned briefly earlier that the NMEA in 1979, the first year after the Wind Ensemble was founded, we got selected to play at NMEA, and the jazz band played there that year. And then in 1981, Wind Ensemble played at NSBA for the first time. The traditions and the things that we've done, River City Roundup, away game trips in the fall, halftime, 4 NFL halftime shows, 3 with me, 1 with Jim Sawyer, NSBA performances that continue to this day at the awards ceremony. We used to host a music bowl. We were asked to do the 50th anniversary of Harvest of Harmony. Now, Nebraskans know what Harvest of Harmony is. It's a great big deal in Grand Island. They have 120 high school bands that march in the parade, and I think the 120 bands total 200 students. Maybe a little bit more than that. But anyway, they asked us to come. And it so happened that we had a football game that night, which shouldn't have been a problem, except that they changed the football game until the afternoon at the last minute. So I had to go to Chancellor Weber again and say, what do we do? This is the 50th anniversary thing. We were to do the parade in the morning and exhibition in the afternoon. I said, you're going to do it. So there was no football, marching band football that day. But we went the night before. One of my favorite experiences, we played at the Grand Island Central Catholic and somebody else's football game. Central Catholic had not won a game the whole year. We got there and I contacted the band director and found out that their fight song, she sent me a bassoon part, an oboe part, and a cymbal part to a piece of music. That's all she could find. Well, it was on Wisconsin. And so we had it in the book. So we went to the game, and I said, okay, her small band, which was junior high and high school, sat in the stands, and then we sat next to them. And so I said, you play the fight song the first time through, and then we'll join in the second time. So they start playing, their team comes running out, and they're jumping up and down the sidelines. The second time too, we start playing, and the whole team stopped and went, "What's that sound?" And so, and of course, those who've seen the marching band, especially when we had football games here, know the shenanigans that go on and all the cheers and things that the band does. And they were doing all these things at this high school game. At halftime, the score was 32-0. Grand Island Catholic. They came back at halftime. We played at halftime. We left after halftime. Standing ovation there. And by the way, the coaches didn't take the teams in the locker room. They stood at the end of the field so they could watch the band. We left after halftime. I get back to the hotel that night. I thought, gee, I wonder what the score of that game was. So I turned the local television on. They ran the scores. Final score: Grand Island Central Catholic 32. The other team nothing. They didn't score again after we left. As God is my witness, on Monday I got a phone call. "Jim, this is so-and-so. I'm the coach at Grand Island Central Catholic High School. How much would it cost for you to bring the band there?" A couple of special experiences. Certainly, performances at NMEA, NSBA, at the International Concert Band Festival we hosted in Omaha, at 2 CBDNAs, at regional MENC conferences. Those are all highlights and things I will always cherish. The NFL performances were especially rewarding for us because we had great ovations at those games. And one of them, Chancellor Weber and Jim Leslie, and I don't know who else, actually in Denver, they were guests of the owner of the Denver Broncos for the game. Jim Leslie told me later, he said, I don't know what you do, but boy, I've never been treated so well in my life as that. But that night, before that game, we went out to John Madden's complex. John Madden's a developer. And Jim Leslie had arranged a fundraiser with alums in the Denver area. And so the band went, and we were playing an outdoor venue in this business park. And I don't know, 120 alums maybe there, and some of the people. And so the band was just doing their music for the show, and I was just kind of walking around, and I'm seeing these people with tears coming down their cheeks. And I was just pulled over with it, and so I talked with someone, and I said, "Oh, it's so exciting. We never knew something from our alma mater would be this good and would be here for that." And as a result, John Madden made a scholarship donation to the College of Fine Arts from that experience. That was a real treat for us. I've told I only have 4 hours to do this. And some of the other traditions, we started the band banquet, and that was always a lot of fun. In fact, I was going to pick on Gail a little bit, because Gail made the mistake of volunteering to come to a band banquet several years ago. And I said to her, "Look, you can leave at any time." I think after about 3 hours. Courtney, was that yours? I think she was at.
I can't remember.
I don't remember. But anyway, in any event, the band banquet is a bonding time. We give awards out, but it's not about the biggest or the best or whatever. It was just a time to have fun. And what? Oh, it was Erica? Okay. In any event, she sat there for most of it, and I said, "Gail, I know you have another important engagement. This is going to go on for a while." But she was very, very gracious to that as well. But the band banquet became a great tradition as well. Women Ensemble, 12 NMEA performances, and you can only perform it once every 3 years. So we did pretty well with that. 11 NSBA, 2 CBDNA performances. In the international travel, some of the most meaningful things, the 96 trip was a really great one that Chancellor Weber helped with a lot. He talked about conducting the band for that one, which he didn't do, by the way. The 2004 trip, when we played in Ireland, and we got 2 great reviews in the newspaper in Ireland for that concert. And the D-Day performance there, and at the D-Day in Ireland for that concert. And the D-Day performance there, and in the D-Day performance, I was conducting, and one of the veterans who was there, who was a ranger that came up that day, came up to me, and while I'm conducting, is tugging me on the sleeve. And I looked at him, and he said, "Can I talk to you?" And so I said, "Erica, will you come and take the next piece?" And so I stepped aside and was talking to this man, and he said, "Are you really from Omaha University?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "After the war, I was stationed in Belgium. I did my bachelor's degree at Omaha University. I cannot believe that a band from my university is here playing for the ceremony today." There were 19 Rangers still alive for that day, and he was one of the 19. Awesome. On the 2006 trip, we went to the Baltic states. We played for International Festival in Lithuania. We played several other places in Lithuania. We went to Latvia, and Giannis set up 3 or 4 concerts for us there. And then we played for the music festival in Estonia. Then we went to Norway. We played 2 performances in Norway. Great trip. And then the most recent concert trip, we applied for WASB, the World Association of Symphonic Bands and Ensembles, and we were selected to play. And then they canceled WASB because of financial situation in Spain. So the WASB board organized a special event in Switzerland and Interlaken at the Youngstown Music Festival. And so of the, I think, 9 bands selected for WASB, 6 of them ended up going to Switzerland to perform. University of Georgia, University of Louisville, UNO, 2 Canadian groups, and a Japanese group. And so we played at this wonderful festival there. We did concerts in Paris and Strasbourg on the way. And so what a great way to go out with a really fine group of young people and good performances all along. I was trying to tally up recently how many different places my career has taken me. I've conducted or done clinics or workshops in over 35 states, in over 30 foreign countries. And all of that is because of what has happened here. Because, with all due respect, being the champion high school band director probably not for the rest of my career would not have resulted in that. But because of the support for international travel that we have had at this institution, and Tom Gutierrez's leadership there, those things were possible. When I first came to Nebraska, I went to NSBA in March. I met Dwayne Johnson there. I met him at NME in the fall, met Dwayne Johnson. And I was talking to Dwayne, and the band director at Nebraska at the time, Bob Fote, came up to me, and I had met him previously. And so I said, "Well, I suppose you 2 guys know each other." And they looked at each other and said, "No, not really." Well, Dwayne has been in Nebraska forever, since Dust. Yes? Since Dust? Yeah, Dust. That's what he said, Dust. And Bob came about 72. Bob Mag, is that close? And this was 79. And they had not met each other. The next morning I went to the college band director's business meeting, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then at 9 o'clock the whole convention business meeting convened, and each of the different representatives did their report. So the class AA, the class A, the class B, and so on. Came to College University, and I stood up and said, "Hello, my name is Jim Saker. I'm the band director at UNO." We had an incredible meeting this morning. We discussed a variety of topics. I'm pleased to tell you that we achieved consensus on every single issue. Of course, I was the only one at the meeting. And after that meeting, Rod Schmidt came up to me and said, "Jim, we haven't been able to get somebody to be the College University chair as a fair. Would you be willing to do that?" And so I said to Rod, "Yeah, I'm going to get tenure, and you got to do these things." And so I became the chair, and then at that spring meeting, I proposed the intercollegiate band that started then the following year, and is still in existence. And my reason for doing it was to get the college band directors involved, and to get the students to know each other while they were in undergraduate school. And then about a year or so after that, Tom Jaworski met me and said, "We want you to run for president of NSBA." And I don't know who I ran against, but what chances did an interloper from another location have of winning that position? Wrong again. The other professional leadership role I had was with NMEA. And again, I really felt that running was the important thing here. I didn't think I would win. I didn't know this until later, and actually somebody, and maybe it was Dwayne Johnson or maybe it was Tom Jaworski, let me know that I was the first university professor ever to serve as president of NMEA, and I presided over the 50th anniversary convention. And so it was even more meaningful to me knowing that. And that was a time of great achievement, great activity, and I had an incredible board that I worked with during those 6 years in that position. In all candor, I should tell you, I ran for North Central MENC president, and I'm pleased to report that I didn't win, and I saved my marriage. Same thing happened when NSBA, and some slackard from Indiana University ended up winning that one when I was a candidate there, and that was a good thing as well. We did host 2 regional CBDNA conferences here. James Sawyer, his first year here, I think, or second year, was a part of that. And then in 2008, we hosted it again. And I honestly believe we had 2 of the most successful North Central conferences anywhere. In fact, Margie Underwood, who is a good friend of Erica's, said to me after the last one, I'm going to make a motion to the next CBDA meeting that Jim Saker be in charge of all of the conferences from this time. But they were well done. And Giannis was here for the 2008 conference as well. I did assume the leadership role in the department in 2002 at a time of incredible turmoil. The first year I was the department chair, I did all the things I just cited except jazz, because Steve was here at that time. But all the music ed stuff, and the marching band, and the department chair's job. And that's when the Vice Chancellor agreed to find a new position to resolve issues sort of next year. I'm proudest of all of several things. First of all, we had fewer than 90 music majors in 2002. That's from the university's statistic book. We had over 250 in 2006 when I stepped down as a chair. We generated under 3,000 student credit hours in 2001, 2002. In 2005, 2006, we generated over 12,000 credit hours. And part of it was because of what I told you before. These people you see seated here and so many others, because although the scholarship money's increased, primarily with Karen White's leadership, we still don't have enough scholarship money. And so Pete's appeal earlier, any way you can help would be great. But the other thing is, we reorganized the program, and we were able to bring in some really gifted and talented faculty to help do the business here. I'd also like to pay credit to several of the people who helped me along the way in particular. Pete Favona was the first jazz band director that we hired shortly after I came. He was here, I believe, for 3 years and then went to Northern Arizona. And then we hired, by the way, I should preface this by saying we finally hired somebody that really knew what they were doing in the jazz area. So that made a big difference too. Tom Woodmanhorse was here a short while for 2 years, and then we hired Steve Rabine. And Steve Rabine performed a task that I will forever remember. And that is, he performed one of the most difficult marimba concertos ever written at the North Central CBDNA conference and hit it out of the park. It was unbelievable. And in the middle of the concert, we had a standing ovation. I'll never forget that, Steve. What a great time that was. And so it was an encore. We did Molly on the Shore with 4 marimbas playing it, with Steve playing with the students on the encore. Pete Madsen. Now, Pete was teaching at Adams State College in Colorado when he came and interviewed. And he did a great job, and he was hands down the choice for that position. And I called off from the position. He said, you know, I don't know about this. And so I took a cue from one Del Weber and did a sales job, and Pete came. And he said something about a cheerleader. I know what the first year is like. Every new job that you, the first year, is that your first year teacher. And so Tim and Erica and Courtney and many of you during the first year were in my office to say, this was a bad mistake, come here. And so I did a little cheerleading, and they all were so successful along the way. As mentioned, James Sawyer was the first actual full-time assistant director of bands. And I want to tell you a quick story about our international trip with him. I told you that we really wanted Charcy, but we wanted Jim as well. We went to Prague on this tour.
Well, I'm not going to tell that story.
And when we got there, Dean White was there with her mom and with her best friend. And I got out of the bus and she said, "You're not going to like this." It was the worst hotel I have ever seen in my entire life. And we were talking about this yesterday with Giannis. It was built in 1951 and last cleaned in 1951. And you got in the elevator, and the minute you stepped in the elevator, it went boom, down about 3 feet, and then another person got boom. So anyway, and I was on the phone all night long trying to get us to a new hotel. And it's a long story, but I want to shorten it to this point. So we finally we know we're going to move the next morning. We've got the kids in the rooms. None would take a shower because it was too filthy. And some of the students, they were so scared that they actually moved in with each other. And so we went to go to bed, and we go into this bedroom that was assigned to us for 2 of us. And the bed was that wide. And if Sawyer laid down on the bed, his head would hang over one end. So we go down to the quote-unquote reception desk, and there are 3 or 4 people, and they're back in the back drinking beer and playing cards. Bang on the hammer. So finally a guy comes out and said, "Sir, we have a little problem. The 2 of us, we have this room, there's only 1 bed." And he said, "No, there are 2 beds in that room, and the accommodations for 2. "No, you don't understand. There's only 1 bed, and it's this small, and look at us. How are we?" "No, there are 2 beds in that room." This goes back and forth for a while, and so up he goes to check it out. Down he comes back in front. "There's 1 bed in that room." Great, we're making progress. Now, in Europe, in many older hotels, they have the slots with all the keys in it. And so when you check in, you get a key. When you leave, you put the key back. And so this is 2 o'clock in the morning, and about 3/4 of the boxes are filled with keys. So I said, "Well, look, we obviously need a room with two beds. We're sorry, but the hotel is completely full." And so Jim says to me, "Let me take care of this." So he starts, and he's a schmoozer anyway. He starts trying to schmooze this guy, and he's dancing around and everything, and the guy never moved. No matter what we said, nothing could happen. So we did what any red-blooded Americans would do. We went up and stole a bed from another room, and we went to sleep. And Tim Giannis. I had to really recruit Tim from a very fine high school position in Wisconsin. He came to his interview, and after some arm twisting and so on, he agreed. When he took the job, he also started on a doctoral degree at UNL. And he was a very busy man with 2 kids at home and young kids at home and back and forth to Lincoln and everything he had to do. But we got along very well, and I tried to do as much as I could to cover for him when I could, and he did the same for me. However, we had one really harsh disagreement. He came into my office one day and said, "Jim, you are wasting my time. I spend all this time at a desk when I should be working with students. This administrative stuff is driving me crazy." So I did what? I took more off his plate, moved it to somebody else. I did some more things myself, and so, anyway. So a couple of years later, I'm in Latvia conducting Giannis's professional wind band, and I get a call, "Jim, I need to talk to you." So I called him, and he said, "I've taken another job." Well, he applied for a couple of jobs. I'd written letters, but I didn't know anything was cooking. He said, "Oh, wow, really, where?" "Well, it's in Kenosha, Wisconsin." "Oh, well, what are you going to do there?" "I'm going to become the fine arts administrator for the Kenosha schools." That's how I responded. And so, anyway, so he left, and this was early, and I was in Europe and not for another couple of weeks with jazz band then. And so, thank God, Dean White was here, and she immediately got on board. And I said, "Okay, here are 20 college band directors to call." And one of those people was Craig Kirchhoff at Minnesota. And Craig Kirchhoff said to the dean, "I got the perfect person for you." So when I got back, we looked at the candidates. We were 2 or 3 others. We looked at candidates, and both the dean and I and the committee that at the time said, "We want to bring her in. She sounds like the perfect one to come in." And that's when Erica joined us. And at that time, it was a temporary position, because they're talking about middle of June, late June, I think. And Erica had another offer at the same time. And so I talked to the dean and said, you know, we really need her here, but she has another offer and it's also a non-tenured position. Is there any way we can just convert this to a tenure track position? So she made a call to Vice Chancellor. I went to Vice Chancellor and talked to him about it. I took her credentials, and she had a doctorate finished, and she had been at Ohio State before teaching in Kansas. And so the Vice Chancellor at that time got on the phone, said to Chris Bell, Chris, come in my office. We need to hire this person, now tell me how we can do it. And at that time, there weren't too many female marching band directors in the country, and we were really short of female faculty members. And so Chris Bell found a way that I could call Erica and say, Erica, we're going to offer you a tenure track position. And that's how we got her here. And guess what? She was a fantastic colleague. And when we went to Latvia, my friend Giannis met Erica for the first time, and Giannis says to me, you have female conductor? There aren't too many of those in the Baltic states. Yeah. And I said, yes. And he said, why female conductor? And I said, wait till you see her work. And so Erica's been back to Latvia now too, and lots of other places too. So Erica, thank you.
Thank you.
And then Courtney. Courtney did the best interview of any person I have ever interviewed in my career. She interviewed Pete Madsen and Jim Sager. By the time she was done asking us questions, we had pretty much decided we wanted to hire her, and she'd answered almost everything that we were interested in as well. And we got done with the interview, and we went and called Melissa immediately and said, we got the person. And so then Courtney joined us as well. Now, and Courtney, by the way, has also been to Latvia and done sessions at the forums that Giannis hosts this big conference, Baltic States Conference, as well. A couple of things about Courtney that I really loved in working with her. The first one was we tried to meet at least once a week and just compare notes where we were and what needed to be done and so on. And I say, no, Courtney, we need to get started on this. And Courtney say, it's already done. Well, we need to start working on it. It's already done. And then when I'd make some funny comment or something, Courtney would go, nice. And again, I mentioned Andy and Tim filling in for both of us this year. By the way, Courtney made history here as well. The first marching band director to lead the band with twins in her belly.
Yes, that's good.
There was a time that it could have been said of me, but that's... I also mentioned previously, and you've met Gediminas, and I'd like to tell you, today after rehearsal, he said to the students in the Wind Ensemble alumni band, and when I introduced him to them, he said something like, Jim Saker has made a huge difference in my life, or had a big impact in my life. I have to tell you, you've had the same impact on me getting this. One of the highlights of my career was conducting our Wind Ensemble and his choir in 2000 doing Carmen. I talked to this alumni band about this today. They were fantastic. I told the band today, I had hair before they started to sing. After they started singing, it was all gone. And there was a standing room only audience, and it was one of many, many experiences there. And if you don't mind getting a minute, I'd like to tell about the national anthem. I got music to the Lithuanian national anthem, and you know that they were under the Soviet regime until the early 1990s, and this is in 2000. And so we rehearsed the arrangement, and at the end of the program, then I asked him to conduct it. And at rehearsal, he conducted it. When he came off stage, there were tears coming down his cheeks. And I thought, oh dear God, I've got the wrong tune. Or, what's wrong? He said, I've never heard my national anthem like this. We sing it, but I've never heard it played with a band with singers like that. I said, well, guess what? It could be a while. Go conduct it again. And so then he did on the program that night. But we've had so many wonderful experiences, and I know the young people in the audience who've been on the tours when we've gone to Lithuania and Latvia know what a great time we've had there. And my friend Giannis, we met on the internet. No. It didn't say for a good time call. And actually, when you hear how, it was the band director, Brigham Young, that introduced me to us. He had taken his band there the previous year, and I was looking for someone to help coordinate a concert. So I emailed him, we started a conversation. I met him in person when I got off the bus in 2000 in Riga, Latvia. And he set up a great concert at the high school. Only high school had a really fine music program there. Had a great concert. I drank, what do you call it, balsam at the little reception after the concert with Bruce Ruda and Leanne Stoltenberg. And the two teenagers that were our narrators from Latvia, he comes out with these cups with this black stuff about the consistency of motor oil, dirty motor oil. And he said to propose a toast, and these two kids go, whoosh, and it's gone. And I went, but we have had Giannis here many times now, and I've been to Latvia many times. And I think probably the most meaningful experience of them all was the 2011 concert. Giannis proposed that we do a commemorative concert there that would be half American music and half Latvian music. The U.S. ambassador hosted it. There were all the dignitaries, President of Latvia, the Prime Minister, you name it was there. Charcy Sawyer came as a featured soloist. We did this concert to a full church of 800 or more people. Ambassadors from England and Canada were there as well. And it was a stunning, stunning success. And it was such a thrill to do that. Giannis and I shared the conducting of that with his wind orchestra and also the students there. I also think Giannis is probably the best known Latvian citizen in America because he's been here and traveled with us so many times. And the most recent experience with him, by the way, his daughter is a cellist. She plays the National Symphony Orchestra, and he has a new grandson, 2.5 years old. And his daughter came and spent some time with us and studied at the university. It's interesting that two of the best friends in the world live thousands and thousands of miles away. And when we left, Cheryl and I left Lithuania one time, Gediminas and Dala were saying goodbye to us, and Dala said to us, even though Cheryl and Jim live thousands of miles away, they're still our neighbors. And I carry that with me every day. So, I have a few more. I know, it's after 9 o'clock. I'll be shut up. But I know you want to hear some of the stories that have happened along the way that I think are kind of funny. I mentioned the band banquet starting and how it was really a lot of fun. And actually, a good portion of it was a roast of me, which was also fun, and I know that the others have shared in that experience as well. But one of the early banquets when Sharon Williams and Carol Schmidt were two of my trusted helpers, got up and they gave this flowering tribute to me. What a great guy he is, and how much fun he is to work with, and how great he is, and on and on. He said, there are just a couple of minor things. And they had put this thing in this paper roll all the way down to the other end of the room with all of the things, the grievances that they had. They also, at some point early in the time, they started a tradition of a Jim Saker look-alike contest, I think around the time of Halloween each year. And you would not believe some of the winners. But my all-time favorites, Derek, where are you? Doug, where are you? Okay, will you guys stand up, please? Now, you've probably seen some of the photos with the color guard with the red and white skirt like out there. It comes to about here and it kind of fits here. Derek and Doug wore those color guard outfits to the party that night and won the Jim Saker look-alike. Bob, I know you're here. Bobby, where are you? So, another thing that happened, was it my birthday or was it Halloween you did this?
It was Halloween.
Okay. So, he literally got the best Saker look-alike contest winner prize ever for Halloween. He came to school with a whole center of his head shaved, with about 7 pillows in his belly. 1 pillow, okay, thank you. Dressed exactly like I typically would dress. And with a baton and some scores in his hand. And so we went to rehearsal that day. I took his trumpet and went into the rehearsal room, and he went in and got up in front of the band to conduct. He literally was a Jim Saker lookalike, although a little younger and a lot better looking. So I love this experience. Kenya, where are you? Okay. So I mentioned that having many of the students at some point or another call me dad or refer to me as dad, and Kenya is one of those. And in fact, I was finishing my basement, and so Kenya needed some money, so I said, hey, I'll hire you to come and help me do the drywall, sand the drywall. So he was downstairs sanding drywall, and he had the dust mask on, and he had some goggles on. And so Cheryl went and made some lunch for us and brought it down. I said, Kenya, come on, we're going to have some lunch. So we went out on the patio in the back, and he took off the mask and he took off the goggles, and he was all white. I wish I had a photo of that. One year at the Honor Band, we're striking the stage to get ready for the Honor Band performances, and Kenya was a band manager at that time. And so he was schlepping equipment, there's some other kids doing things, and one of the girls went and asked him a question. And he said, well, you see that old man over there? Pointed at me and says, well, go and ask him, he can help you, out. There's a young girl, Western Nebraska someplace, I don't know. And she came over and she said, sir, you see that fellow over there? And I said, yeah. I said, I think he was really disrespectful to you. And I said, oh, really, what did he say? And he said, well, see that old man over there? And you can go talk to him. And I said, it's okay. I have to put up with it. He's my son. And somebody was standing next to me and was Bob, yeah. Bob about fell off laughing, and this little girl goes just turned and walked away. We've been blessed to have been at some weddings. Not been at childbirths, but celebrated childbirths. Just informally, how many of you have a significant other or spouse that you spend time with these days that either met in the band or was in the band while you were in it? Would you stand, please? E-Harmony, eat your heart out. And Del stole my thunder on the Terra Mater, but he didn't get the punchline. So at the end of this whole episode, this pharmacist, when I was exasperated because we couldn't get the pills that she desperately needed, this pharmacist looks at me very sternly and said, well, look, after all, it's birth control. You two will have to find some other way. So I said to my wife, don't you tell a soul. And within 2 minutes of being back with the group, everybody knew. So Brent, where are you? Brent Coates. And I'm going to use this example, because I didn't know about it at the time, but this happened a couple other times. It was after we did John Mackey's Turbine. But Brent, at the, I think, alumni function or something, when they mentioned that during the first year, when he was a freshman, he had a solo that he was playing that I wouldn't let him off the hook for. And one time I said to him, look, Brent, I played this when I was in college. I know it's difficult, but you can do it. I'll get in the practice room. And so he was a freshman. Is that right, Brent, at that time? And I knew he was a pretty talented kid, and I knew he could do it, but he was struggling with it. So anyway, the concert came, and he played it great. And after the concert, we went outside and burned the music. The Flutes did the same thing after we played Turbine at CBDNA in 2008. And Karrin mentioned about her performance anxiety. We gave her the Distinguished Alum Award several years ago, and when she spoke with the students, somebody asked her about that. Do you ever get nervous when you perform? She said, the only time I was nervous when I had to play for Dr. Saker, boy. And I want to tell you one story about us as a profession. Back in the 80s, I was on an airplane flying somewhere to conduct, and where I was conducting was a new piece that was being premiered there that I was going to conduct a premiere of it. So I was studying my score on the plane, and I know many of my friends, something we like to do is study scores. It's just kind of fun. So I'm studying this score, and the other thing is it keeps people from talking to you. So I'm studying this score, and when I went to put it away, the guy, and there was an empty seat between us, a guy in the aisle looked at me and said, "Do you know what's happening when you look at that stuff on the page?" And I said, yes, I do. I said, I have to, and I kind of make light of it. I said, I'm going to conduct this piece. I've never heard it before. It's a brand new piece of music, and if I don't know how it goes, I'm in deep trouble. He said, "Looks like bird droppings to me." And I said, well, you know how it is when you meet somebody, and we start exchanging pleasantries. Well, come to find out that, and he said to me, well, I'm in the Air Force, and what I do is classified. I can talk about it. He had a suit on, a Dr. River suit. Okay, big deal. I was talking, and come to find out that one of the PE professors here had been his football coach in Texas when he was growing up. And then later found out that we had some other friends, mutual friends, and he comes back and forth often. And he said, well, I can tell you I have a bachelor's, master, and doctorate from MIT. I fly a B-52, but I'm an aeronautical engineer. Oh, okay. Well, what do you do? What are you doing here? He said, well, I go back and forth between California, Washington, and Omaha because I'm in charge of this special project. And, oh, but I can't tell you about it. So then he says, well, I'll tell you what I will tell you. Someday you're going to turn on your television, and you're going to find out that we're doing things with airplanes, with military aircraft, that is so impossible to believe that you won't believe it. That you won't even know that the aircraft is there. And my job is I'm the liaison between the engineers, the designers, the industry, the generals, the pilots, the Pentagon, and I am supposed to coordinate all this and make sure everybody is working from the same page. How about that? And he was impressed I could read music. So it just depends upon your perspective. I'd like to conclude by making some special acknowledgments of special people. My family has been so much a part of my life and so supportive and encouraging and critical when needed and helpful, and they have been a wonderful part of my life in this experience. And all of you that have been that way as well. I feel like you're my family just like they're my family. And it's been a wonderful ride for me to do this and to have this time with all of you. I can't tell you how humbled I am and how honored I am that you chose to spend this weekend with us. And I wish you all the best with wherever your careers may take you as well. Thank you so much.
At the reception after the concert tomorrow. Hope we'll see you all there. Thank you so much. Very good.
I just want to make one quick announcement. We would like to kind of get a picture of alumni if we could. I know some of you have to run off, and if you do, that's fine. But if we get one quick picture with all of Dr. Saker's students, alumni students, that would be awesome. If you can just come up here on the stage maybe for a moment. And also, if you want to get pictures with Dr. Saker afterwards, we'll be here with cameras and can grab a few shots. Also, don't forget to take your mugs home with you. Did you explain Saker time? Uh-oh, hold on, wait, he's got more to say. Hold on.
I'm sorry, I was supposed to do this at the start. This is very quick. Okay, so some of the people said, why sacred time? Where did this come from? Well, it came from several things. First of all, the first variation of this, and I know that those of you that were in the marching band will recognize this immediately, sacred time also meant one more time. And Norm, how many times is one more time? Sacred time also meant that we are almost out of time, and we've got to get this done, so get your act together. Sacred time referred to primarily by my family, but also by some of you, as being always running a little bit late. In other words, he's working on sacred time. And in the early 2000s, Marcus Reddick and Jamie Hughes and a couple of other people, during that fall football season, they put a tape recorder up and hooked it into the squawker, the squawk box. You make announcements over football practices, and they recorded me throughout that season. And then at the end of the season for the band banquet, they mixed that recording to Hammer Time, grab things. And Marcus was the chanter for it, and it was all, instead of Hammer Time, it was Sacred Time. And they cut in my voice as a part of this thing throughout the whole thing. And the connecting stuff that Hammer Time, I don't know anything about rap music, but the connecting stuff was step kick down. Step kick down, which is what we did coming on the field at pregame. And so the whole recording is just with me cut in with all of their comments as well. With the band banquet said, if you practice as much as you did spending time on this thing. But anyway, and the other thing, of course, is 1978 to 2014 is the sacred time at UNO. So that's where the sacred time came for the months.
Okay, so if alumni who want to be in a picture would come up here on the stage quick. Wait, don't leave.